grew up in a place, in a home, where my parents had drugs readily available. They did drugs. And so we would have parties on the weekend in my house, and I'd wake up in the morning and go to, walk around, and there'd be passed out people on the couches and beer cans everywhere, and there'd be drugs laying out. And I began to experiment, and I would try this and that, and my little brother and I would walk through, and we would be doing this on a regular basis. My parents would, smoke weed in the car while we were driving around, and we didn't know much about secondhand smoke then, but basically we were doing the drugs with them everywhere we went, and that I didn't know any different. I grew up in a home where I thought that that's what everybody did. Every family did that. My friends were of families that also did the same thing. It was just what we did. And by the time I was in 6th grade, so I was about 12 or 13 years old, I was already bringing drugs to school. I was selling them to my friends. I was getting trouble all the time. When I was 13 years old, I stole my dad's truck. I went out partying that night. I got drunk. I drove home. I got caught by the cops at 13 years old, no license, driving a truck, my dad's truck drunk. I could go on and on with the stories of the things that I did, but that's not the point of this talk, to glorify that time. I was just going nowhere. And to top it all off, I didn't know what I wanted to be or to do with my life. I thought that I was going to be a drug dealer. And not just the drug dealer on the street selling drugs. No, I wanted to be like the guy that was over all the people who sold the drugs on the street, so that I could sit home all day and play video games. I thought that that's what I want to do drugs, play video games, and eat pizza all day long. And that was my dream, what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I was 17 years old, something changed for the better, but it wasn't God yet. When I was 17 years old, I was dared by a friend to try out for the school play. And he came up to me and says, "Dude, man, you want to try out for the school play?" I'm like, "Nah." I got long hair down the middle of my back, ripped jeans, tie-dye shirt, loafers. Like, nah, I wouldn't do that. That's dumb. I'm not into plays or anything like that. Come on, what are you, chicken? You're just afraid. You're chicken, man. You don't want to do it. I'm not chicken. I can sing. I grew up going to choir, and I got a solo every once in a while. I'm like, I got a voice. I can sing. I can act. That doesn't scare me. I just don't want to do it because it's done. So he dared me, and I went in, and we auditioned for the school play, and a week later, we went up to the list to see what parts we got. And, of course, we started at the bottom. You can see how much we thought of ourselves. And we went up the list, and then we found my friend Jason's name. And like, "Hey, man, you got a part? That's cool." And I thought, man, I didn't even get one. That's pretty bad. And I climbed the list, and then, the top line, the top name is the person who has the lead in the show. And there's my name, Pr.O'Connor. And I'm like, what? Me? I went down to the director's office. I'm like, "Are you crazy, man? Look at me. Do I look like play material? School, play, woo." I said, "I'm sorry, you got the wrong guy." And this English teacher, who was the drama director for the school, public school, said, "No, you're the one. You got talent, kid. I see it. Problem is, you're getting in trouble all the time. So here's the deal that I'm going to put before you. I think you could do this. I think you could be great." But he says, "But you got to get off the drugs. You got to stay out of trouble. Let me tell you, it's 3 months of intense rehearsals. You got to memorize all these lines. You got to come to the rehearsal every single night, and we rehearse for 2 hours every night. This is going to be hard, and it's going to stress you out. But if you stay clean and you do this, something wonderful could happen." He says, "I'm going to give you all night to think about it. You tell me tomorrow what you want to do." Oh, man, I couldn't sleep that night. I was tossing and turning because I was thinking, but I like my life. I like partying. I like doing these things. But inside of me, I longed to know if maybe there was something more to me than being a loser. And I'm not calling every person out there a loser. I'm just saying that that's what I felt like. I felt like it was what I was choosing to do with my life because I couldn't do anything else. I didn't think I was good at anything. And I thought I was a loser. And so I came in the next morning, and I told him, "Okay, I'm going to do it." He says, "But let me tell you, you get in trouble one time, you're out. I don't care if it's the day before the show. We'll cancel it. You're out of here. You got to be clean the whole time." You know what? God helped me, I think, because I was clean the whole time. We came to the show, and it was a huge hit in town. I was in the newspaper. The town was like, wow. I would walk down the aisle in high school, and kids would be high-fiving me and be like, man, you're awesome. Wow, that was crazy. And then we started doing community theater. My dad got involved in theater. We started doing it together. We did shows like South Pacific and Dick Whittington and His Cat and Christmas Carol and Annie Get Your Gun and all these different shows. We just did theater, and we were doing theater. And then my drama coach said to me, you ought to think about trying out for Broadway. I'm like, that's funny. Broadway, yeah, right. Me, some kid from Killingly, Connecticut. I mean, who's ever heard of that? It's way up in northeastern Connecticut, near the border of Mass in Rhode Island. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he says, no, you really do this. I said, really? You think so? Sure. And he says, here's a Broadway school. It's called AMDA, American Musical Dramatic Academy. Thousands of kids from all over the country audition every year. They accept 75. And you could do this. I'm like, yeah, right, me. You're funny. And he talked me into it. And I went and I auditioned. And a crazy thing happened. They took me. And what was weird is that I'm sitting there waiting for the audition, and there's all these super talented people that have been acting and dancing and singing since they were little kids, like la 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 la, and they're dancing poses and making noises to warm up their voice, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, I don't do any of that weird stuff. I don't even know what that is. Of course, I learned how to do that weird stuff, but they accepted me, and I went to Broadway. And it was amazing. The first semester, my teacher said, kid, you got it all. You got a tenor voice. You can sing high C's. I mean, that's money. You're going to make it. You got a good look. You have good personality up front. I mean, wow, you're going to be somebody. And I actually started to think I was going to be somebody. Maybe a little bit too much of myself. My drug problem started to catch up with me. I was living on 73rd and Broadway in Manhattan. I was having trouble making ends meet. I was looking for a job, maybe not too hard, but I was looking for a job. I couldn't find one. I ended up working at FAO Schwartz, but it wasn't making enough to pay my bills. And so I started stealing a little drugs on the side, just to make a little money. And then I was not only dealing, but I started doing drugs. And then I was partying late at night. And then I wasn't showing up for classes in the morning. I'd walk in late. But I thought, hey, I'm so talented and I'm going to make it. Who needs to show up for classes, right? Because I'm so good, I'm just going to be a superstar. And near the end of my second semester, the director of the school pulled me into the office and said, unless you quit school, we're going to flunk you. Flunk me? You either quit or if you flunk here, it's not going to look very good on a resume. So you might as well just quit and go home. Or figure out your life or whatever, but you're not making it. I called my dad to come pick me up. He came down to New York City, picked me up, brought me back to Connecticut, didn't talk to me the whole way home. He was so disappointed. When I left for Broadway, my dad put his arm around me. Son, when you're rich and famous, I'm going to quit my job and live off your income. And then now that I'm coming home, his loser son, who has no job, no future, who's going to start mooching off his drugs again, drinking his beer, is coming home. They put me in the basement. I was living in the basement of the house. I felt like I was in the basement of my life. For the first time in my life, I considered suicide. I started thinking about it. I wanted to kill myself. I thought I'd lost everything. I was on top of the world. I was going to be somebody. I had a future. Now I had no future again. Working at Ames department store, coming home, having no friends, no life. And I was going to kill myself. And that's when I was open to God. People had tried to get me to go to church or talk about God in my life, but I wasn't interested. But now I had no hope, no future. And so God seemed like an option for me, or at least it seemed that way at the time because I was in trouble. And it's funny how being in trouble, being in need, how when we are suffering or when things are not going right, that it opens opportunity for us in our lives, in our spiritual lives, to consider that maybe God could be an answer for us, that maybe this God that maybe we didn't think was too important, but now when we have need, when we're empty, when we're hurting, all of a sudden takes on importance. And so at that moment, my brother came downstairs. My brother is 4 years younger than me. So at the time, he would have been about 15 years old. And he was a a punk rocker. He had purple mohawk, and he had size, 84 pants with a belt, really baggy shirts, and he had all these chains around his neck with a lock. And I guess that was just in case someone tried to steal it. We're in New York. I guess we know locks, right? So he's got all these chains around his neck with a lock, and he comes down and he says, "Dude, man, you're messed up." I'm like, "I'm messed up? Look in the mirror, man. I don't have no purple mohawk. What's your deal?" He's like, "No, man, no. What I mean is you don't have any friends." He says, "You don't have a life. You're talking about killing yourself. All you do is drugs all the time." And he was doing drugs too. He just did them with other people. I was doing them all alone. And he's like, "Man, you need to get a life. You need to go to church." Like, what? Now, we didn't grow up going to church. I mean, Catholic in name, but never really took God seriously. You know what I mean? I went with my grandmother a couple times, and it didn't work out. But here's my brother like, "Come on, go to church." I'm like, "What? I'm not going to church." And he's like, "Hey, man, some of the guys that we used to go to school with and party with, they're going to church." I said, "Get out of here." He says, "Yeah, man, remember Peter? Peter was a bartender at a stripper place. He used to drive around his IROC Z28 and he'd sell cocaine out of it." That was Peter. Darby was a punk rocker too. He wore leather pants, leather shirt. He had changed his hair color every week, black, orange, purple, green, blue. It didn't matter. Just changed his hair color. Wore makeup. And these guys were going to church. And so I couldn't picture Darby with his orange hair, my bartender at a stripper place friend, and my brother with his purple mohawk sitting in a church. And believe me, if they were here today, you wouldn't be paying attention to my talk. You'd be looking at their hair, okay? You would be distracted. And I thought to myself, man, I'd like to see why those guys go to church. That seems weird. I wonder what they do over there. I'm like, maybe there's girls? Maybe, what's attracting them to church? But in my heart, deep inside, I knew I was dying. And I was hoping that maybe there was some answer here, but I wasn't sure. So I told my brother, "Sure, tell them to pick me up on Sunday." And he goes, "No, man, they don't go to church on Sunday. They go to church on Saturday." And I'm like, "I don't care what day to go to church. Just tell them to pick me up." So Saturday morning, they pick me up, and I get into the back seat of the car. And I'm like, "Hey, guys." And all the way to church, they're like, "Dude, man, praise God. I was reading the Bible this morning about Jesus and his love, and wow, it's amazing. And in the book of Matthew, he says that we should love one another. And I'm really, I don't think naturally we don't love, but God is love." And they're talking about the Lord, Jesus, and all these words. And I'm like, what's wrong with them? You see, because every other word in my vocabulary was F and 4 letters. And whenever I said Jesus, it was not in the nice, sweet, I love you way. His name was a curse word. But here's these two guys that I used to party with and do these things. They're completely different, like aliens came down and sucked their brain out and put a different brain in, because they are not the same guys. So I get nervous. I'm thinking, like, I've seen this in the news. This must be a cult. They're going to get me, and they're going to try to, like, mesmerize me with their eyes. So I know it sounds weird, but on the way to church that morning, I was thinking, don't look anybody in the eyes. Don't look anybody in the eyes. Just look down at the floor, because I did not want to become like them. They seemed crazy to me. They were crazy. They were crazy for Jesus. They were crazy. So we get to church, and I'm getting out of the back seat, and I'm looking down. And we come to the door, and they open it up, and there's a greeter there. Anybody know what a greeter is here? A greeter is that person that stands at the entrance so that you cannot get by without being welcomed, right? Which is a good thing. Well, that greeter was there that morning. Her name was Betty Vinton, and she was kind of this overweight woman with big rosy red cheeks and this humongous smile. Now, Betty was one of those people that didn't let you get by without a hug. I like those people. I like those people. So I come in the door, and this heavyset woman grabs me, and her arms around me, and she starts hugging me. "Oh, I love you. Welcome to our church." She's pinching my cheek. "You're so handsome. It's so nice. Did these young men bring you to church? That's great. You should be here. You belong here. I love you." And I'm like, "Lady, you don't even know me. How can you say all these things to me? I'm a bad person. If you knew me, you wouldn't like me." But, something happened in that moment. You know, this morning in our sermon, we talked about the world will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. When I walked through the door, I felt the love of that church. Love. The hug that I got that morning. And then not just that, but the attention that the church gave me. Not overbearing. I didn't feel like they were in my face or in my privacy. They were just warm. They wanted to know who I was. They sat down with me and talked with me. They took an interest in my life. They got to know me. They thanked me. They put me first in line and let me eat first. I mean, you know, at the fellowship luncheon, it was amazing. The love and the attention and the care that they gave to me was transforming to me because I wasn't used to that. I'm in the world. People in the world do not love. They're selfish. I don't remember getting a hug from an adult. They didn't hug me. They pointed guns at me. They put my hands behind my back in handcuffs. They yelled at me because I was always doing something wrong. But to be hugged and to be loved and to be honored, that's something totally different. But that is what I found in the church. So we're sitting at the table, and I'm scoffing down my food. And I'm like, why do you guys go to church on Saturday? And these guys that are around me immediately whip out Bibles. And they start like in the book of Genesis and Exodus. And believe me, I'd never read a Bible in my life. I didn't even know it was in English. I thought it was in a foreign language. Like you needed some special degree to translate Bible. And I'm like, wow, you guys know the Bible? They're like, yeah, we read it every day. And I'm like, do you have one in English? And they're like, this one's in English. All of them were in English. I didn't know better. But they gave me one. And I said, I want to read this. I was already a reader. I have to tell you, some people, they're like, oh, I don't know about the reading the Bible because I don't like to read. I liked to read. So when I went home that day, that Saturday, I started reading the Bible. They told me to begin in Matthew because that was the story of Jesus. And I was really interested in that. I had heard about him, but I didn't know him. So I read from the time that I got home from church all the way till I fell asleep at night. The next morning, I woke up. I went to work. When I got home, I read the Bible all the way till I fell asleep at night. Every day, I went to work. And then I read the Bible for hours, like 6 to 8 hours a day. I read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. I was like, devouring the Bible, reading it. And I was so interested in it. And I was enjoying it. And I wanted to go back to church on Saturday. So I called my friends Thursday night. I said, guys, I want to go to church with you Saturday morning. They're like, yes. You know, we got him. Yes. And I said, but I've got a party Friday night. I'm going over to my friend's house, and I'm going to sleep over there. Pick me up at his house in the morning. Here's the address. They're like, no problem. We'll be there. They said 8:45. Okay, 8:45. All right. No, 9 o'clock, excuse me, because church started at 9:30. They're like, we're going to pick you up at 9. No problem. 9 o'clock. All right, I'll be there. So I went to this party Friday night. I didn't know about the Sabbath. I didn't know you weren't supposed to party. I just was going because I was invited. I did drugs. I drank too much. I ended up blacking out at 2 o'clock in the morning, vomiting all over myself, which is not unusual. I couldn't handle my liquor or my attitude. I literally was a mess. When I woke up at 8:45, 15 minutes before these guys were going to pick me up. You got to understand what a miracle this is. Normally, I don't wake up till like 2 or 3 in the afternoon after partying like that. I don't know even what time I went to bed because I blacked out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Could have been 4 or 5. But at 8:45, 15 minutes before these guys were going to pick me up, I wake up. Bing! Ugh. And I look, and I got vomit all over my shirt. It's in my hair. There's people like passed out all around me. Drugs, alcohol everywhere. And I'm like, oh, what did I do? And then all of a sudden it hits me. Bing! I got to go to church. In 15 minutes, they're going to pick me up. And then all of a sudden, I realize something. I don't have a change of clothes. I didn't bring a change of clothes. I didn't bring a toothbrush. I didn't bring anything. I just showed up, and I slept over this guy's house. And all of a sudden, I realized what a hypocrite I was. I'm going to go to church after I partied all night, and I did things I wasn't supposed to do and said things I wasn't supposed to say, and now I'm covered in vomit. And I'm going to go to church like this? And all of a sudden, I just start crying. 19 years old, I'm laying there and I'm crying and tears are coming out of my eyes. And then I start sobbing. And then I cry that, you know, that cry of like total loss of, and it's not coming out of your nose. I'm just crying because my life is so screwed up. My life is so messed up. My life is so at the bottom. And I start praying to God right there. God, I can't do this anymore. I hate my life. You got to change me, God. I hate this. I don't want to be like this anymore. I need something different. You got to change me inside. And I start crying out and I start praying to him. I hate myself. I don't want to be a drug dealer. I don't want to be addicted the rest of my life. I want to be free. God, you got to help me. And I cry out to him and I'm praying in my misery. And I can't explain it. I don't believe in magic or any of that garbage. I just believe that I felt God's forgiveness. Because I felt at peace all of a sudden. Like I didn't have to worry. That everything was going to be okay. That it was going to be good. I got off the floor feeling peaceful. I went into the bathroom and I washed the vomit out of my hair and I wiped at the sink, wiped the vomit off my shirt, and I took someone's toothbrush and brushed my teeth and put it back. And then I took their spray cologne and sprayed myself. And then I hear beep, beep, beep. And I went downstairs and I went out and I got in the back seat of the car and I'm thinking they're going to tell me to go home. They're going to tell me to take a shower. I stink. I've been partying all night. I stink like cigarettes and marijuana and crack and whatever else was going on in that house. I smelled terrible. I'm like, they're going to kick me out. They're going to say, dude, you stink, man. You can't go to church like this. Look at the vomit on your shirt. They didn't say one word. Went to church, arrived. They get out of the car. They start heading towards the doors, and I'm scared. I don't want to get out. I'm going to church looking like this. I'm a mess. What are they going to tell me? And I start heading towards the door, and their doors are made of glass, so that you can see who the greeter is that morning. Guess who the lady was that morning? The same lady as the week before. The big, heavy-set woman, and she was like guarding the doors. There was no way of sneaking around her. When I open the door and go inside, I'm expecting a lecture, right? Just like my mom would give me. But this is church. This is not home. Lectures happen at home. You lecture your kids. You don't lecture people in church. You let the Holy Spirit give the lectures in church. You love people in church. You accept people in church. You let God give the lectures. You let the sermons give the lectures. But in church, we love people. And you know what that woman did? That Seventh-day Adventist lady, she hugged me again, the same. And she didn't say one word about the way I smelled or the way I looked, but she embraced me and she said, I love you. That transformed my life. How will all men know that we are his disciples if we love one another? Now, I can't say I would know what would happen to my life if she hadn't hugged me or if they had sent me home to take a shower or whatever. I can't say. I don't know. But I can tell you what happened because they didn't do that. Because they just accepted me the way I was. And believe me, that wasn't my only mistake I ever made. I made many more mistakes, but I made them in the church, and the church always loved me. And God saved me. Day by day, week by week, month by month. Called me to the ministry. Me? I'm a leper. I'm messed up. Right, hon? I'm messed up. She can tell you. I'm not okay. I am a sinner saved by his grace. That's all I am. And he keeps saving me by his grace every week, every day. And that's the only thing that keeps me in. It's not because I'm better now and now I can do it on my own. I can't. And when I stop being connected with Jesus and I start wandering from him and I start doing my own thing, I start getting messed up again. Because I need Jesus all the time. We all need Jesus all the time. God changed me. It's not me. The person you see before you today, it's not really me. It's what Jesus has changed me into. It's him. Because I know what me is. Me is that guy on the floor of that house Friday night. The next day, that changed me. That's just what Jesus does in our lives. And you can have it too. It's not too far. God isn't at some far-off corner of the universe. That's not the God we serve. God is close, and he loves us all. And he can work in our lives whether we've been in church 100 years or we've been in church for 100 seconds. God can change us all because he loves us.